They said it was the American dream. You sign the papers, get the keys, take the picture in front of your new home, and suddenly you've made it. You're not renting anymore. You're not throwing money away. You're investing in your future. That's what everyone says. But here's what they don't tell you. When you buy that home, you're not just buying walls and a roof. You're signing a 30-year contract with a bank, a contract that quietly owns you. For 3 decades, you'll pay and pay and pay, and by the time it's over, you'll have handed over nearly twice the value of the house. Not to yourself, but to them. To the lender. Miss one payment, the house isn't yours. Lose your job, get sick, need to move. None of it matters. The mortgage doesn't care. It just keeps coming. Every month, every year. For 30 years, they told you this would be freedom, but it feels more like a sentence. A beautiful granite countertopped suburban prison with a white picket fence to keep the truth out. Because what they really sold you wasn't a home. It was a lifetime of debt in disguise. And if you ever stop to ask who truly owns your house, look at who gets paid first. Jake and Lila weren't reckless. They weren't chasing luxury. They were exactly what the system said a responsible couple should be. They both went to college, state schools, nothing fancy. They married at 28. They had decent jobs. Lila worked in public education. Jake was a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm. They didn't travel much. They cooked at home. They saved. So when they finally put down a 10% deposit on a $320,000 house in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, it felt like the reward they had earned for playing by the rules. It wasn't their dream home, but it was theirs. Or so they thought. The first few months were magical. Lila painted the baby's room. Jake planted hydrangeas in the front yard. They hosted a 4th of July barbecue. Their parents beamed with pride. Then reality crept in. The mortgage was tight but manageable. Until the roof started leaking. Until the HVAC went out. Until daycare for their daughter jumped to $1,300 a month. They pulled from savings. Then from credit. Then the interest rates adjusted. What had been a $1,750 payment was now $2,100. And rising. Jake asked for a raise. He got laid off. Lila picked up a second job, tutoring on weekends. They put off vacations, then birthdays, then dental work. Suddenly, the house was no longer a symbol of security. It was a monthly threat, a bill they lived to serve, a wall around their options. They wanted to move closer to Lila's new job, 45 minutes away, but the market dipped and they owed more than the house was worth. Selling would leave them underwater. Renting it out was a gamble. So they stayed. Year after year, they stayed. Through layoffs, through a second child, through nights lying awake wondering, what happens if one of us gets sick? At year 9, Jake joked, "We don't live in this house, we work for it." Lila didn't laugh. By year 12, it wasn't funny anymore. Their daughter was now in middle school. The neighborhood had changed. The nearby schools had declined. The taxes had climbed, but their wages hadn't. Jake started commuting 2 hours each day to take a higher-paying job. Lila stopped tutoring, not out of choice, but exhaustion. They weren't living. They were managing. Managing to stay afloat. Managing to keep the illusion intact. Because what would people say if they sold? If they rented? If they admitted that the American dream had turned into a 24/7 anxiety attack? Jake and Lila didn't default. They didn't declare bankruptcy. They didn't lose the house. But they lost something else, their freedom, their peace, their ability to choose. Also, they could keep paying into a promise that never quite delivered. Let's strip away the glossy real estate brochures, the Pinterest home tours, and the family photos taken on move-in day. What's really happening when you buy a house? You're entering one of the most powerful contracts in the modern economy, a 30-year mortgage. It sounds harmless, just a monthly payment, right? But the truth is more complex and more dangerous. First, the illusion of ownership. From day one, you're told you're a homeowner, but legally and financially, you're not. The bank owns the home. They have the title. You have debt until that loan is paid in full, plus interest, plus fees, plus taxes. You are renting from the bank. You carry all the risks of ownership, repairs, maintenance, insurance, without the liquidity or freedom of actual ownership. If something goes wrong, the bank doesn't help. But if you miss payments, they can take everything, quickly. So, who's really in control? Second, you pay twice the price. Let's say you buy a house for $300,000. You put down 10%, that's $30,000. You take out a 30-year mortgage for $270,000 at 6% interest, a common rate for working-class borrowers. By the end of the loan, if you don't refinance or pay it off early, you'll have paid over $615,000, more than double. That means for every $1 of home value, you're handing the bank $1 in profit, just for the privilege of paying them over 3 decades. It's not just interest either. Property taxes go up. Homeowners insurance creeps higher. HOA fees, flood coverage, pest control, emergency plumbing. It all stacks up. Add inflation and your investment doesn't always grow. In fact, in many areas, housing markets lose value over time, especially outside urban hubs. So, where's the upside? Third, the system protects lenders, not buyers. You'd think a 30-year commitment would come with flexibility, but the system is designed to keep you locked in and the banks protected. Refinancing, it's costly, time-consuming, and not always available. Selling, it involves agents, staging, closing costs, and if you haven't built enough equity, you might lose money just trying to get out. Defaulting, catastrophic. It ruins credit, employment options, future housing. Meanwhile, banks get bailed out during crashes. They bundle your loan into securities and sell them on Wall Street. They profit off your debt before you've even paid a cent. You don't own your home. You're the asset. Fourth, psychological lock-in. Here's the scariest part. It's not just financial. It's psychological. Owning a home becomes part of your identity. It becomes a symbol of stability, adulthood, success. People who rent are irresponsible, unstable, wasting money. So even when things get hard, when the math doesn't add up, people stay. They sacrifice their health, their careers, even their marriages, just to stay in the house. Because to leave would be to admit failure. To sell would be shameful. To rent again, unthinkable. The trap doesn't just catch your wallet. It wraps itself around your pride, your self-worth, your sense of security. And it works beautifully because you'll defend it yourself. Fifth, the mortgage is the anchor of consumer debt. This is the part few people see. Your mortgage isn't just a loan. It's the foundation that holds your other financial burdens in place. Because you have a mortgage, you can't leave your job. Because you have a mortgage, you keep your kids in the same underfunded school. Because you have a mortgage, you put your emergencies on credit cards. Because you have a mortgage, you can't afford to get sick, take a sabbatical, or start a business. It's not just 30 years of payments. It's 30 years of saying no to anything that might make you truly free. At PowerLine Stories, we believe this isn't just a personal finance issue. It's a structural problem, one designed to look like opportunity, but built to extract labor, time, and freedom from an entire generation. This isn't about one bad loan. It's about a system that turns home ownership into modern-day debt servitude, wrapped in the language of independence. And for millions like Jake and Lila, the real question isn't, when will we pay this off? It's, will we ever feel like we own our lives again? Not everyone feels the pain of the mortgage trap equally. Sure, on paper, it's the same deal for everyone. You borrow, you pay, you live in the home, you build equity. But in practice, the impact of a 30-year mortgage falls hardest on those with the fewest safety nets, the least generational wealth, and the most responsibility. Let's start with the obvious, the middle class. The stretched thin middle. For middle-income earners, buying a home often means spending everything you have just to get in the game. There's no inheritance, no parental co-signer, no safety cushion. You put down what you can, you cross your fingers, and you hope that nothing goes wrong, because if it does, the system offers little mercy. A job loss, a medical bill, a furnace that dies in January. There's no buffer. You can't just absorb the hit. You start sliding, slowly, then all at once. And unlike the wealthy, you can't just sell the house and move on. Because when you're barely building equity and values drop, you're stuck, trapped between foreclosure and financial paralysis. Single parents, especially women, the system was never designed with them in mind. Single mothers face some of the worst mortgage outcomes in the country. They earn less, qualify for worse loans, and carry more household costs, yet are expected to do it all alone. If they default, they're blamed for bad decisions. If they rent, they're told they're failing their kids. If they work 2 jobs to stay current, they're labeled neglectful. Owning a home doesn't free them. It binds them to jobs they can't leave, to neighborhoods they can't escape, to lives with no room to breathe. And when the house breaks, or the school district fails, or the costs mount beyond reason, there's no one else to carry the load, the recently divorced. No one buys a home expecting divorce. But life happens. People change. Marriages end. And when they do, the house, once a shared dream, becomes a weapon. Who gets to stay? Who pays the mortgage? Who gets stuck with a property neither person can afford alone? Thousands end up defaulting, not because they're irresponsible, but because the system was built for couples, not people. Refinancing in your name alone is often impossible. Selling in a down market is devastating. So they limp along, 2 broken people chained to one roof simply because the debt won't let them go. Caregivers and aging homeowners. Another silent victim. Aging parents and caregivers. These are people who spent decades paying into homes they thought would carry them into retirement. But as health declines and income shrinks, the house turns from asset to burden. Property taxes keep rising. Insurance gets more expensive. Maintenance becomes physically impossible. So what do? They borrow more, reverse mortgages, home equity loans, just to stay housed. They watch their wealth get eaten away by the very asset that was supposed to protect it. Caregivers, often adult children, step in. But they too are burdened by student loans, kids, rising rent. Now they're also paying 2 mortgages, their own and their parents'. It's a cycle, and it doesn't end with the house being paid off. Sometimes it ends with the house being taken. Millennials and Gen Z, the next trapped generation. The newest victims of this machine? The generation that entered adulthood during economic crisis, climate instability, and housing market chaos. They were told, renting is throwing money away, so they buy. Late, expensively, and with crushing interest rates. They buy in unsafe markets. They buy with minimal down payments. They buy because they're terrified they'll never get in if they wait. And once they buy, they discover they can't afford a child. They can't switch cities. They can't go back to school. They can't even break up with their partner because the mortgage won't let them. The dream becomes a straitjacket before they turn 35. But it doesn't end there. This system punishes flexibility. It punishes those who move often, care for others, fall behind, or need a second chance. It rewards the financially secure, the married, the healthy, the stable. But it crushes anyone who steps outside that mold, even for a moment. And the cruelest part? It's disguised as responsibility. It's marketed as maturity. It's sold as the best investment you'll ever make. At PowerLine Stories, we believe that a system built to collapse under life's normal chaos isn't a system worth trusting. Because when the people most hurt by home ownership are also the ones working hardest just to hold on, it's not just a housing crisis. It's a betrayal, and it's happening at scale. Not everyone accepts the mortgage trap. Not everyone believes that taking on hundreds of thousands in debt just to own a room makes sense. In the shadow of this massive system, a quiet resistance has begun to grow. Some are whispering, some are shouting, but all are asking the same question: what if we don't play the game? And that question is terrifying to a system built on obedience. The rise of renting by choice. For decades, renting has been framed as failure. Why throw money away? You're just paying someone else's mortgage. Real adults own property, but a new mindset is breaking through that noise, especially among younger generations. Renting isn't failure, it's freedom. Renters aren't tied to 30-year contracts. They can move for better jobs, cheaper cities, or healthier environments. They don't have to fix the roof, or fight with HOAs, or fear foreclosure. They pay for space. Then they live their lives. And for millions who watch their parents drown in mortgage stress, that's not wasting money. That's buying peace of mind. The tiny house movement. Then there are the radicals, the ones who shrink the dream down to size. Tiny homes, van life, off-grid cabins, people building 200-square-foot shelters and saying, this is enough. They're opting out of mortgages entirely, saving tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands, escaping from property taxes, utility bills, and the endless pursuit of more. These aren't hippie dropouts. They're nurses, teachers, coders, parents. And they're choosing freedom over footage, living smaller so they can live fuller. The system mocks them, calls them unstable, immature, unrealistic. But deep down, it's scared. Because if enough people follow, the whole game changes. FIRE. Financial independence. Retire early. Another front in this rebellion? The FIRE movement. Young professionals slashing expenses, stacking savings, and retiring by 35, not to sip cocktails on beaches, but to escape the 40-year work-to-pay lifestyle. Many avoid mortgages altogether, or if they do buy, they buy cheap, fast, and outright. No debt, no leash, no slow-drip extraction of their freedom. They treat homes as tools, not symbols, and they walk away from the narrative that says real wealth comes from home equity, because they know real wealth is control over your time. The emotional resistance, saying no to the dream. There's also a subtler rebellion. It's not in blog posts or YouTube channels. It's in living rooms, therapy offices, late-night conversations between couples deciding, let's not buy right now. Let's wait. Let's choose what's best for us. It's in people choosing to live with roommates longer, to stay mobile, to not measure their worth in square footage. It's emotional, it's cultural, and it's powerful, because if enough people stop believing that home ownership equals success, then maybe success can start to look a lot more like sanity. And yet, the system pushes back. But here's the catch. The mortgage system doesn't like to be questioned. Banks, builders, brokers, influencers, they all have something to lose, so they push harder. Rent is dead money. You're throwing away equity. You'll regret not buying when prices go up. Some cities ban tiny homes. Zoning laws make affordable builds illegal. Taxes punish secondary dwellings. Lenders make it harder to finance anything non-traditional. The system is scared because it needs you to believe. If too many people stop signing those 30-year notes, the economy trembles. PowerLine Stories believes resistance is rational. We believe that questioning the dream is not cynicism, it's survival. It's intelligence. It's self-preservation in an economy designed to drain you slowly. We don't say never buy a home, but we ask, at what cost? Not just in money, but in time, in stress, in lost opportunities, in mental health. Because when a house becomes a burden, you can't escape. That's not wealth. That's a trap with drywall. There's a reason banks, real estate agents, and financial influencers all repeat the same message. Buy a home. It's the best investment you'll ever make. But when you strip away the glossy promises and dig into the data, a different truth emerges. One the system doesn't want you to see. And when we asked financial analysts, economists, and housing policy experts one simple question, is home ownership still the golden ticket to wealth? The answers were deeply revealing. The data, home ownership is not a guaranteed wealth builder. According to a 2023 Federal Reserve report, nearly 40% of American homeowners have less than $25,000 in equity, despite years of mortgage payments. 1 in 4 households spend over 50% of their income on housing. And in some markets, median home prices have dropped below 2008 levels, meaning thousands are still underwater 15 years after the crash. Dr. Teresa Ghilarducci, economist at the New School, puts it bluntly. For middle-class families, home ownership is no longer the reliable path to financial security. It's a leveraged bet, often taken with very little information and very high risk. The profit model. You're the revenue stream. Let's be clear. Your mortgage isn't a service. It's a product. And the longer you pay, the more profit banks make. When you take out a mortgage, your loan is packaged with thousands of others. It's sold to Wall Street as a mortgage-backed security. Investors trade it, insure it, and profit off your promise to pay. Your life becomes a yield. Your stress becomes a line item, and if you default, no problem. The system has already made money on you. As housing analyst Kevin Erdman explains, the house isn't the asset, you are. The system is built not to help you own a home, but to help others profit from your struggle too. Appreciation wealth when you can't cash out. Real estate is supposed to build wealth, but what kind? Yes, your house might appreciate in value, but can you actually use that money? Only if you sell and pay capital gains, commissions, moving costs. Or you refinance, adding more years, more interest, more risk. In practice, most Americans never access that wealth. They just live inside a home that gets more expensive to maintain while their wages stagnate. Housing expert Dr. Jenny Schutz at Brookings puts it this way. Home appreciation is irrelevant if your costs rise faster, and for most families they do, especially in the form of property taxes, repairs, and insurance. The psychological framing is intentional. Why is home ownership still marketed as the American dream? Because it locks people in, locked to a location, locked to a job, locked into 30 years of predictable payments for the bank. When we spoke with former mortgage banker Alan Rothman, he admitted, "We were trained to sell home ownership not just as a financial step, but as a moral one. You were more responsible if you bought. You were more mature. That wasn't economics, that was psychology, and it worked. A debt engine that feeds on guilt. The genius of the mortgage model is that it keeps you complicit. You don't question the system, you question yourself. Did I buy too much house? Should I be working harder? Why can't I afford this anymore?" You don't blame the product, you blame your choices. Because the mortgage is dressed up as your dream, it doesn't look like a trap, it looks like success. And so people keep paying, even when they're drowning, even when they know it's killing them, because leaving would mean admitting they were fooled. And nobody wants to believe that. PowerLine Stories believes, information is resistance. We believe that facts matter, that data matters, that hearing from real experts, not influencers, not brokers, is how you reclaim your power. Because the truth is, buying a home can still work, but only if you walk in with your eyes wide open. You need to know how much you're really paying. You need to know what your exit strategy is. You need to know that the people telling you buy now or miss out are being paid to say that. This isn't just a financial decision. It's a life decision. And if someone's pressuring you to sign a 30-year deal without letting you question it, that's not guidance. That's a sales pitch with a smile. Jake and Lila are still in that house. Not because they love it, not because it suits their life anymore, but because, like millions of Americans, they feel they have no other option. They're now in year 18 of a 30-year mortgage. They've paid over $12,000 so far, and they still owe more than half. They've skipped vacations, put off health care, watched their kids grow up in a home that became more pressure than peace, but they stay because walking away feels like failure, and no one taught them how to escape. But what if the real failure is the system? The system taught them that owning a home is success, that renting was shameful, that debt was normal, that financial stress was just part of being a grown-up. But let's call it what it really is. A 30-year sentence dressed up as the American dream. A contract that robs you of flexibility, freedom, and in many cases, your future. It doesn't have to be this way. Escape isn't easy, but it's possible. Jake and Lila aren't trapped because they made dumb decisions. They're trapped because no one ever told them they had other choices. And if you're watching this, wondering whether you're walking into the same trap or already deep inside it, this isn't about shame. It's about awareness, because escape starts with seeing the bars. It starts with questions. Do I really need to buy right now? Is this house giving me life or taking it away? Is the sacrifice worth it or just expected of me? It starts with saying, I refuse to mortgage my joy for a lie someone else sold me. You don't need permission to live differently. You don't need to buy to be respected. You don't need square footage to prove you're successful. You don't need a 30-year chain around your ankle to be a responsible adult. There are other ways. Rent and keep your freedom. Buy small and stay mobile. Live with less and breathe again. Say no to the script and write your own. Because what's the point of owning a house if the house ends up owning you? At PowerLine Stories, we don't pretend there's one path. We believe in clarity. We believe in informed choice. We believe you deserve more than do what everyone else does. This story isn't just about Jake and Lila. It's about millions of families trying to hold up a dream that was never built for them in the first place. So the next time someone tells you to buy now before it's too late, pause. Ask, too late for what? A lifetime of stress, of immobility, of debt disguised as pride? Maybe the bravest thing you can do is to walk away before you're locked in, not because you're giving up, but because you've finally woken up. This isn't the end, it's a choice. To keep walking the path everyone's on, or to finally take a different one. You're not trapped, not yet, but the clock is ticking. Choose wisely.